G'day folks, my name is Matt and I'm creating an adventure called The Swamp of Souls that I'm writing and illustrating, and along the way I'm sharing my world building tips that I'm discovering that might help you with your own world building projects. But first of all, we're about to hit 6,000 subscribers. I was at 1,000 at the start of this year, so I just want to thank everyone that's come on board and also the people that have supported me and Lena from day one. Thank you guys, much appreciated. For this episode, I'm going to be sharing a quick and easy way to get gods into your world. Now, the long way, it's a lot of fun and I don't want to diminish it, but it's a big chunk of work. That's where you create the pantheon, the lore behind them, their history, and then you also create their religion, their temples, their iconography, how they fit in your world, how they impact individual cities. Big chunk of work. And it's a lot for your players to absorb on day one of playing. So this alternative might suit you more, especially if you're running a one-shot or a mini-campaign like the Swamp of Souls. So let's take a look at this alternative. It's easy to implement and it gets you started straight away. And it's also a lot of fun because you do a shared storytelling adventure with the player and the GM. So let's set the scene with some basic lore. Winter's Edge is a haunted land where lost spirits linger, unwilling to depart the physical world. Their reasons vary widely, from the bewildering shock of a sudden death to the burning desire for vengeance, or the fierce determination to protect loved ones they've left behind. The northern landscape itself acts as a lodestone, binding spirits to its unnatural ice that blankets the land. Additionally, the swamp has become a mire, ensnaring souls in its lethargic despair. These spirits, they can vary from minor animal essences, skittish and fearful, to powerful souls that are still tethered to the physical realm by memories, both their own memories and those retained by the living that they've left behind. Over time, however, these connections wither away. Unable to move on, the spirits gradually fade into mere shades, unnoticed and forgotten. Path to power. In rare cases, however, a shade is acknowledged. Perhaps an offering is placed on a lost shrine of a long-forgotten god, or a frightened feral spirit finds comfort in the whispers of a kind wanderer. This acknowledgement might be enough to create a gateway between the lesser spirit and the mortal, and through this gateway, some power can be passed. These touched mortals accept the spirit's bestowed power, however modest it is, and manifest it in the realm of the living. The more a spirit impacts the mortal world and gains recognition and acknowledgement, the stronger it grows. A symbiotic relationship forms between the mortal, who is granted this limited power, and the immortal spirit, who gains strength as it gains influence in the physical realm. The mortal becomes the spirit's champion or priest, and through this bond, the spirit begins to ascend. This arduous, long journey can be a pathway to godhood, and others who witness the champion's deed and agree with their cause might also choose to acknowledge the spirit. The perils of power. If the spirit does gain followers, it enters a dangerous phase of its ascent to godhood. Too many followers, especially those hungry for power and looking to tap into the spirit's limited gifts, can stretch the spirit too far and end up weakening it, tearing it back down into an insignificant shade. This is especially true if you treat the spirit as the one who has the spell slots, and I'll talk about that a bit more later on. Cults often form quickly and die just as fast when the followers become disillusioned with the power offered by this fading godling. It is because of this delicate balance that spirits tend to favour a single champion, one they can trust as they both grow in power. This method means the GM can largely ignore having to develop the major religions and how they impact the world. Religious plotlines can spring up as a cult gains its momentum and seeks to influence societies, but these rarely last long, and if they do, they tend to become more of a political movement where the spirit has long ceased to be involved. The gods of Winter's Edge. A few spirits have grown powerful enough to be recognised as gods and are well known by the locals of Winter's Edge. Even so, their influence is considered minimal and restricted to their chosen champions. There are rumours that some of these gods have long passed on, and only the idea of them lives on. I'll share some of these examples of a few of these ascendant spirits as I wrap up how a GM and a player can build this godling over time. Player-driven deities. So mechanically how this works is the player attaches themselves at a low level to a weak spirit, and the spirit can be animalistic, it can be wise, it can be sage-like, anything that either the GM or the player decides on. In the early levels, the spirit can be quite vague, unsure of what it once was. And only as the spirit grows in power and starts to remember who it was, can this backstory be revealed to the player. So this method doesn't deal with an organised pantheon of gods, just a chaotic struggle of spirits all trying to ascend and gain power. And it also explains why lower level characters have limited access to this power. Perhaps the spell slots don't represent the well of spiritual power that the character has, but represents the power that a spirit has and is able to impart on its followers. So this method means the player and the GM don't have to spend much time developing these gods, and they can stay vague if the player doesn't really want to explore that side of things, just this force that manifests itself in the background. But if the player does want to explore that, there's 3 ways they can do it. It can be totally player-driven, where the player builds up the backstory of this godling as it ascends. Or it could be developed by the GM and he secretly knows what it is, and there could be a whole storyline as the player discovers this godling that drives them. Perhaps it was once a powerful dark entity and is now dealing with this player who wants to follow good. Maybe the player influences it enough that it changes its course and becomes a force for good. There are so many potential storylines you can build up out of this relationship and what the godling once was. Another method is to have a table that you roll on each time the player levels and slowly develops where the godling is going in terms of its alignment, what it's remembering, and what it's becoming. And so there's a almost random storytelling aspect thrown at the player where they have to adjust and adapt, and so does the GM as this godling starts to randomly generate its own path. That table is still in development and will be included in the Swamp of Souls adventure. Now, story-wise, the player might come across other champions or seeking to grow the power of this spirit. So there's going to be almost like Highlander-type duels where they realise only one can really ascend. Other champions battling champions to prove their own strength. Whole range of almost gunslinger-like storylines out there. And thematically, it can make sense too, like that warlock paladin doesn't have to choose a patron and a god and explain why he's got these 2 pretty different creatures that he's worshipping or getting his power from. It could be one powerful spirit that bestows these gifts, or it could be a nest of spirits like Tunro Ka has here, where he wears a cloak made out of the bones of his tribe's ancestors, and the spirits still cling to this and whisper and help him along his way. So however the story unfolds, the player should feel like they're almost at the forefront of a new changing of the guard as they push their own spirit to godhood and in turn increase their own power. So that's my quick approach to deities in Winter's Edge. Let me know your own approaches. How do you bring gods into your world? And hope to see you in the next episode. Bye!